All right, welcome back. Today we have Coach Adam Rice, offense coordinator. Is it Lugoff Elgin High School? Did I say that right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You got that right.
I'm a dumb country boy, so it's kind of hard for me to pronounce words. So I have to make sure that I posted it. But Coach, thanks for being here. You're my first coach to talk to since football in high school has been over. So you're the first one to hop on. But
I appreciate you having me for sure.
Oh yeah, for sure. Because I coach football, basketball, and softball. So like, I think I get time off, but I don't.
Yeah, no, you don't. Not at that level. Not at that level.
No, we made it to the first round of the playoffs. We lost. I had that next week like off, and then we had tryouts that Monday. So I had like, but that first week after the season's over, there's those first couple of days you got to get helmets, you got to get this, and so it's a couple of days. So it's really like I had like 2 or 3 days off, and then it was like, hey, basketball tryouts, hop right back into it.
Struggle, man, the struggle.
Oh, it's crazy. People are like, "Oh, what are you gonna do with your time off?" I said, "What's time off? I don't." And then when basketball's over, I get like a week off, and it's like, "Hey, softball tryouts," and you're like, "Okay."
Yeah.
And when school's done, then well, summer stuff now. And you're like, "Okay, here we go."
And then spring, right after that, it's just one after another after another.
Oh, it's crazy. But I tell the people think I'm crazy. I'm like, but I was a 3-sport athlete, so like my whole life, you don't know anything else, right? Like you
right.
When college hit, I tried to play college ball, and that didn't work out. But in college, you had a lot of time, so I started coaching at like 19. I was like, I don't know what to do with this time. Like I need to, so just got into coaching right away. Like so people look at me like I'm crazy, and these kids are like, what? The funny thing is these kids I go on Thanksgiving vacation or Christmas vacation, and I go, I didn't do that. I was playing sports. There was no vacation.
Yeah, we didn't have a break. We didn't have a break. That's for sure.
No, basketball tournaments or lifting or whatever it was, you had to. But this isn't about me. This is not about me. So what got you into coaching? Because we all have a reason.
What got me into coaching was honestly Coach BJ Lauder. He was my high school head coach for my freshman through my junior year. And he's now the FCA rep back home where I'm from in Western North Carolina. He really got me into coaching because he really changed my life. As a freshman, I was a young knucklehead, just doing everything I wasn't supposed to do in a small town where we was from, and he really impacted me and changed the way that I looked at football and looked at any other sports. An example, because I did play all of them: football, basketball, baseball, track. I did all those to keep me out of trouble. Because where I'm from, it's easy to get in trouble, but if you're doing the right things, it's a little bit harder to get into trouble because you're busy all the time.
Right.
And so he really impacted me, and he gave me that father figure that I was looking for. Because I did have a single mom, and she was working 2 or 3 jobs, so there was times where I'd walk home from school, walk home from practice or whatever, and he really gave me that inspiration to, hey, it's bigger than football, it's bigger than the game. And so whenever I finally finished playing, it was just a way to give back in a sense, because I know all kids are going through something, especially in our youth today. The kids are going through something, whether they show it to you or not. Every kid's going through something at home, man. You don't know what they wake up to or go to bed to. So for that, I'm forever thankful for him. So he really got me impacted in that. And then the other assistant coach that he had on staff, they really took to me and took to my brothers, and it just really made me want to coach from the time I was 14, 15 years old.
Yeah. I feel like I'm old. I'm only 34, and I feel like I'm really old. But like you think about what kids go through. Like I remember playing sports. You got coach. Every kid got coached the same. Like it was a hard nosed coach. Everything else.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
like I was similar. Like I had football coach. He'd be hard on you, but then he would pull you aside and say like, "I'm being hard on you because this is what you need." Like he didn't just do it and say like, "F you." Like this is what's going to happen.
Yep.
Nowadays, you really have to take more time to learn about the kid because we'll have kids that do get yelled at home. So the last thing they want to do is get yelled at when they're at practice. Now,
Right.
obviously, you're going to coach them hard in moments, but I think if you could do it, then pull them aside and have an adult conversation with them, then when that happens, they go. Like I have a couple kids where, at least O line wise, I'm like the only one that can get on them. If another coach does, they turn around and say like "f you" to them, and it's like, "What'd you just say?" And I have to grab them and be like, "Hold on, I'll fix it."
Yeah.
Like I don't with everything going on, like you don't know what home life is. You got to figure that out. Social media, all that stuff. I think some kids are still recovering from the being locked in a house for almost a year. Like that part is still, you know, I don't want to put that excuse on forever, but I think like socializing wise, like our kids now that are junior seniors are getting out of it because they've are now socializing a lot more. But it's still you can't do that to every kid.
Yeah.
Um, but so you got into coaching. Right now, you're offense coordinator, quarterback. What was the journey like to become an OC? Because I tell us people, like as coaches, we have a list of what we want to do too. Like it's about the kids, but we have a list too. So like, how did that come about?
So basically, coaching. As far as getting into the coaching world, I can give my props to Jim Sosby and Eric Gash. Both were hometown guys where I'm from. Eric Gash ended up being the head coach my senior year whenever Coach Lauder stepped down to be the AD.
Hmm.
So where I'm from, you could either be the AD or the head coach. You can't be both.
Okay.
Um, so Coach Lauder ended up being the AD assistant principal my senior year, and Coach Gash ended up being our head coach my senior year. And Coach Gash's brother, Sam Gash, he played in the NFL for a lot of years. Um, he's got a wealth of knowledge in himself on the defense side of the ball. And so Coach Sosby, who was from South Carolina, he coached with Bobby Bentley at Burns, coached at Greenville, had a lot of successful stints at the OC job in itself at Burns and Greenville and stuff like that. So being with him, I learned a lot about the spread because whenever I was with Coach Lauder, we was a lot of I wing, and we would do shotgun wing tee concepts, stuff like that. Um, but really getting with Sosby, um, learned a lot more spread principles, and that was huge for me, growing because by the time I graduated, we was in a full spread. Like Cole Cleary was one of our receivers. He led the nation in receiving yards my senior year. Um, so getting with him, I learned a lot more about the game as far as how to expand it, how to do more than one thing, be good at multiple things. Um, and that was huge for me. And I didn't take advantage of it at the time, but now looking back at it, I still got a tight relationship with all of those guys, and just figuring out, what works, what doesn't, um, how we're good from a culture standpoint, how to adapt no matter what team you got or what personnel you got or anything like that. So I'm forever grateful to all of those guys that I've mentioned. Um, and it was huge for me as a now a coach, but also looking back then as a player, like those those guys know some football, and I was grateful to be up under
Right. Yeah, I was the same way. We were power I option. Like that's all we were in high school. The 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 spread was taboo. You know what I mean? Like we can't
them.
touch it. Then when I wanted to coach, I'm like, well, I got to learn everything. I think the biggest moment was I a junior in high school? I think I was. The Mike Leach, Michael Crabtree throw against Texas. I was like,
Right.
that looks fun. Like that all looks great. And so learning that was fun. And so I think I'm a spread guy, but being a spread guy, people think you're always air raid. That's what they kind of allude to, like you're spread air raid. And I don't think that people understand that, yes, you can have that, but if you come in, you don't have the receivers or the quarterback to do so, you can adapt that spread to be maybe more 12 personnel or whatever it is,
Yeah,
and run the football or, short game. And it's more adaptable, I think, to doing those type of things.
for sure.
Because like we're doing that this year, where you could consider us a spread team. Um, we had seniors that are two outside receivers and slots, so we could do whatever. This coming year, we're losing them all, so now we're kind of dabbling into the shotgun spread wing T philosophies of it just because of what we're going to have. But I think if we were under center stuff and try to expand into that, it'd be a lot more difficult.
Yeah,
Um,
and that's how we was my freshman through my sophomore year. End of my sophomore year, we started adapting more of the spread concepts because Sosby did end up being our offensive coordinator. So we did start spreading the ball out a lot. But my freshman and sophomore year, we was a lot of 11 and 12 personnel, and we're going to hit you in the mouth, but at the same time, we've got the athletes to where we can spread you out. So we had that healthy mix of both, and being a player in that system, like I said, you always look back at it after you finish playing, like, oh, okay, I see what those guys were doing.
mhm.
Um, and so that's kind of where I'm at to this day. Like I see what they were doing now. They were setting us up for success in the future because after that we went on to a lot of 1, 2 lost seasons and really getting the ball into the playmakers' hands and letting them do what they do. So that was kind of my first person point of view of adaptation into the air raid type of philosophy and anything like that. Um, it kind of grew from that starting point of the end of my sophomore year. We adapted to that. I ended up playing right tackle, left tackle, whatever they needed me to do on the offensive line, and obviously on the defensive line, we played at a small 1A 2A school, so I played both ways and played special teams, everything like that. But did whatever we could to win ball games and to be nasty and physical as much as we could. And I'm forever grateful for that because it taught me a whole lot of ball in a wide aspect of the game.
Mhm. How small was your high school? Because I want to hear. Some people think a small high school is small.
So I think my freshman and sophomore year we was 1A, but we was kind of the bigger class of 1A. So we had, and it was in North Carolina. Obviously, I think we had 700 to 800 kids. So ended up my junior year, we competed in a 2A level, and we would always end up having to play Reedsville, which is, I mean, the 2A powerhouse in North Carolina. Um, it's either Reedsville or Shelby in North Carolina 2A. So getting to play against those guys in playoff games and and tight games, it was them that we would have to go.
Because I went to a small high school. My high school when I was there had 325 kids.
Oh yeah, we was definitely bigger than
Oh
that.
yeah, like our graduating class was 76 kids. Like that was it. Because in Illinois there's 8 classes in
But
football.
gotcha.
You got 8 of them. Where I coach at now is in the western suburbs of Chicago, and we were 7A this year, and we have 1,900 kids in the school. We play in our conference the biggest enrollment school. It's the high school is split into 2, so they got if they don't make the playoffs though, like they don't. Um, if they ever did, their enrollment's 8,000 when they combine
Dang.
both. Their basketball coach goes, yeah, every year I get 150 to 200 kids try out for basketball. like, and they got to trim it down to like 15 or 20. Their football team always constantly has like 80 kids, 90 kids. Because I grew up literally 20 minutes from the University of Illinois in Champaign, and
Gotcha.
it's just surrounded by schools like that. 300 here, 200 here. Your schools in Champaign are 1,000 or so.
And see, that's what always irritated me because Henderson County football could be a whole lot better than what it was.
Mhm.
But in Henderson County in North Carolina, there's 4 high schools. You got East Henderson, West Henderson, North Henderson, and Hendersonville. So really, if you was to split up into 2 high schools, it would be Hendersonville and West Henderson. Plus, then you would add East Henderson and North Henderson into it'd be a 2 school district.
Okay.
And if you added West Henderson and Hendersonville, I mean, you get top notch or top notch. Because my 4 years of high school, our volleyball team competed for state championship every year. They won it, I believe, 3 years out of my 4 years. Same thing with wrestling. Like you got a good demographic there. Um, it was just so spread out. We was a 2A school, and everybody else was 3A or 4A.
Okay.
So I feel like in a sense that's kind of the problem in North Carolina. There's so many high schools in a given area that if you really would combine some of them, they would be a lot more juggernauts in the western region of it than as opposed to you get to Charlotte and stuff like that in the eastern region.
Right. Because that was the thing growing up is whatever town you lived in, that was the school you went to. Um, and you were all probably 20 minutes to a half hour away from each other.
Yeah,
Um, in the suburbs of Chicago, because I moved up here in 2018, I learned, oh, like in certain towns, you might have 2 high schools, you might have 3 high schools.
yeah,
Um, and the districts are different. So, like where I'm from, your school district is your high school, grade school, middle school. Up here, it's some of them are like that, but some up here are just high school districts. So where I coach at, it's just a high school district. It's 2 high schools, but we are 15, 20 minutes away from each other. Another school I coached at, they have 4 high schools in their district.
gotcha.
Um, and the reason why you want to work at those places is because you get paid more because all that money just goes to 4 schools instead of 10.
Yeah,
Uh, and so it's just very strange how the suburbs work. And how the suburbs work is you can drive by a high school with 2,000 kids, and then you'll go to the next town that's a school of 500. It's very strange how, and a school I worked at, there was an apartment building on this, and it faced this way, and the other side faced this way. So, like, apartments on this side. If you were on this street, you went to this other high school. You were on this street, you went to this high school in the same building. Like,
yeah,
that's wherever it's drawn, that's where it goes.
yeah,
Like where I work at in the town of Addison, there's a street in Addison. The north side of that street does not go to Addison High School. They go to a different high school. Like it's very strange that they live in that town and don't go to that high school.
right.
So coming from a small country fed town, and then I went to Eastern Illinois University, which is not a big place, and then moving up here, you're like, oh my God, like how do I keep up with all this?
Right, and that's how it was for me coming from North Carolina all the way down to South Carolina. I seen that it was the same thing, just a little bit more spread
Yeah,
out. Because I think there's a lot of schools down here that like you can see where they were dominant in the past couple years, but then obviously attendance zones changed, realignments changed, and all of that, and it's a little bit different now.
yeah.
So yeah, I definitely see what you're talking
Yeah, and you guys in those other states are like districts, like you play the schools in your district. In Illinois, we got conferences, like you play in this conference, and up in the suburbs, it's not as bad. In your conference, you may like. I remember coming up here, they were like, "Oh, we gotta go play so and so," and I'm like, "How far is the trip?" They go, "Oh my God, it's so long," and I'm thinking, "Oh my God, is it an hour and a half?" And they go, "Yes." They go, "It's like 30 minutes to 35 minutes," and I'm like, where I grew up, that was the normal. Like that.
Yeah, and that's the thing with me. Like, my senior year of high school, we played Avery County, which was over there near Boone, where App State is at.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So we were in Western North Carolina having to travel to Avery County, and it'd be an hour, hour and a half, hour 45, whatever, and it was just crazy seeing at the smaller division levels how spread out it was division wise.
Hmm. Yeah, and our conference is split in two. So you have your gold and silver side. We're on the gold side. The farthest we have to go takes us like 45 minutes to an hour, but it's only because of traffic, because they're near the city. To come home takes us 30 minutes. So when the game's done, we zoom. To get there is the traffic. That's the other thing I had to learn in the suburbs was where I'm from. They go, "Oh, how far away is that?" "Oh, it's like 10 miles." I'm like, "Oh, that'll take me like 10 minutes." Up here, they're like, I'm like, "Oh, it's only so far. It's going to take us like 20 minutes." And they're like, "Did you count for traffic?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" What? I said, "My traffic say back home was a tractor." Like
Yeah,
up here, it's totally different. Got 4-lane roads, and we're zooming. They were zooming, and down there, I'm like, "Where's my 2-lane roads?" And like we played a school this year in the playoffs called Moline High School. It's by the Quad Cities. We're like on the border of Iowa. We're getting out there, and it's cornfields and everything else. I was like, "Oh yeah, here we go. Like this is my type of school." And they walked out with their country boys. Their whole line, like I'm 6'5", and they were all had to be close to my height. I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool."
yeah.
Yeah, I'm always just curious how other states work. In Illinois, though, another thing we're dealing with, and I'm having a hard time with, is Catholic schools, like the private schools. Where I'm from, there's one, and that's it. Like in Central Illinois. Up
Yeah,
here in the suburbs, there's a lot, and the thing that we're battling now is they can recruit kids,
yeah,
quote unquote, like they're not supposed to, but they have a way to do it.
right.
So our state title games are next week or this coming weekend. They play the day after Thanksgiving and play Saturday. I think in all 8 classes, 5 or 6 of them have Catholic schools in the state title game, and it's just ridiculous. I don't know if you guys deal with all that, but like up here, it's bad.
Not so much in South Carolina, but the in North Carolina definitely. There was a big private school in North Carolina. They're big 4A, and that's as high as it gets in North Carolina is 4A. And they had Cardinal Gibbons, and they were the same thing. They were a Catholic school, quote unquote, and private school, but they participated in the public school league in
Mhm.
North Carolina. So they always had cream of the crop, for
Yeah.
instance,
Yep.
and they were always competitive, and um, they also would play teams from Charlotte and stuff like that. So they had a tough schedule and stuff like that. And then here in South Carolina, you got the SCISA, which is the South Carolina Independent League, um, and they're a little bit more spread out, I guess you could say, than up there in North Carolina because it's kind of all over. But there's a lot of schools in South Carolina that are public charter schools that compete in
Mhm.
the league. Um, and I also think it's not a fair game to them because public charter schools down here in South Carolina, they got to follow the same guidelines as the public schools. And
Mhm.
if you're a public charter school, you're kind of at a disadvantage. Like Gray Collegiate, for example, they got kicked out of the playoffs this year because of recruiting and stuff like that. But they literally try to follow the same guidelines that we follow as public school.
Right.
Um, they were just voted into the league of the public high school. So um, you got teams like that that kind of get shunned in a way of, oh, they always win, they always compete, blah blah blah. They got 35 kids, and Um, it's just at the end of the day, I just want to line up and play. Like
Right.
whether they recruit their kids or whether they don't. Um, at the end of the day, let's line up and play football. And because at the end of the day, it's about the Jimmys and the Joes. It's not the X's and O's. So yeah, we see that in every state. I've seen it in North Carolina and South
Yeah.
Carolina. Because whenever I was at Astro School and we won back-to-back state championships, they just won another state championship. Um, we would get a lot of our kids from Canada. A lot of them kids can play football from Canada,
Yeah.
but the problem is they need a year to grow.
Hmm.
Like if we get them, as a freshman, we're not going to see what their potential is to their sophomore and in their sophomore season.
Right.
It all ends up being the speed of the game, same way as if you get down here in South Carolina, is if you get a freshman, you're not going to see his potential until towards the end of his freshman season or his sophomore season because they got to catch up no matter how old they are or what their background is.
Right. Yeah. Up here, the private schools were in conferences with public schools. Last year or this year, they finally put them all in like their own conference, so they had to play each other.
Yeah,
I think the reason why us public school guys complain about it is they can recruit in they can get kids into a 40-mile radius.
yeah,
Um, so in the suburbs of Chicago, they get a couple Indiana kids. I think we get frustrated because then they go down to your youth feeder programs and they just show their face.
yeah,
I think that's kind of where the frustration comes in. And I think the stuff they complain about, and when they complain about things, we're like, your problems are not the same problems that we have. Like
right.
the fundraising we have to do, the grade checks we have to do, the therapist sessions we have to be with the kids because they have a rough home life.
Mm-hmm.
But like talking to other guys in other states, they go, I can't believe that your private schools can go to the same state title game as a public school. So it's always different everywhere. Because there's some private schools that are not like that. They don't get all the Division One kids, but there's some up here like that you know, oh, this kid's going to Florida, this kid's going to Iowa, this kid's going here, and you're like, okay, like that's not fair. To we get what we get, like we adapt each year. This is what we get. Um, so you became an OC. A big key word I think you said earlier has to resonate with some people, and that's a system, right? You don't want a hodgepodge, you want a system.
Yeah.
Um, when you came in, did you have a system, or did you have to adapt kind of what you wanted, or how did that work?
So my system that I run personally is um, it's adapted based on the kids. So I call it whenever I interview for jobs or interview for a head coaching job or whatever, I bring my playbook. I let them see that. I show them different plays and different variations of it as opposed to most people this is what we do, this is what it is. If they don't adapt, that's their problem. Well, at the end of the day, like you and I know, we're high school coaches.
Right.
Um, we've got to adapt to our children that we got, and sometimes kids aren't going to be able to adapt to us. So in a sense, that's why we get paid. We've
Right.
got we've got to adapt to them, and that's just a system that I believe in, and a system that I've adapted from being with multiple different system type of guys. I've been in the system with 12 personnel, 13 personnel, also 10 personnel. Um, I've been in the system with two back guys and 21 personnel, whatever. I think that if you don't adapt to what your kids are good at, then that just shows your hand as a coach.
Right.
Um, so I think that you got to do the best job that you can for the kids and with the kids that you got in order to be successful.
Right. Right. Um, I've been the same thing. I've been a part of where it was like a hodgepodge of plays. Um, I was an OC at the age of like 24, 25. And my biggest problem was I thought I knew it all. That was my big problem. And then the head coach handcuffed me and said, like, literally, here was the conversation. Okay, Steve. Dino Babers was the head coach at Eastern at the time. I was coaching at a high school there. Now, Dino Babers' system is snap the ball in 12 seconds. Like,
Yeah.
Jimmy G was there at Eastern. Like, this was the big thing. So the head coach goes, "Hey, Steve, I want to snap the ball in 12 to 15 seconds." And I was like, "Okay, like, we can make it work. That means we have to have a small playbook. Like, we'll make it work." And he goes, "Well, I want 50 formations." And he literally was like, "I want 50." I said, "Okay." Um, then he said, "I want inside zone, outside zone, power, trap, counter, toss, and I want this, and I want this." And I was like, "Okay." Like, now we're getting into the territory of, like, even for me to keep up with is gonna be bad. And
Yeah.
so I think I learned more about what not to do in that situation than I would if I worked for a state title coach. No offense, like state title coaches, but, like, I learned in that moment. Well, and you're young, so when you're young and you get told that, you're like, "Well, I wanna keep my OC spot," so you buy into that, like, "Okay, this is what's gonna work." And I could you probably know, it didn't work. Like, none of
Yeah.
it worked. And so when I came up to the suburbs, worked for a head coach, he said, "Steve, my offense is very simple. Here we go. We run 6 formations, 3 or 4 run plays, and these pass concepts, that's it. That's it. That's all we do." And we went 9-0, and I was like, "Oh, wait a minute. Maybe there is something to, like, keeping it simple, stupid." And then I hopped to another high school, same thing. He goes, "I have 4 run plays, 2 zone, 2 gap. We have these formations. We have this. Boom." High school I'm at now, we're trying to do the same thing. So I'm like, I've really learned that was bad, and we'll never do that again.
And so what helped me really learn was I'll give all credit whenever it's due, and it's definitely to Sean Bryson. So Sean Bryson was an NFL guy. He played in the NFL, played running back. He played with Philip Fulmer at Tennessee whenever they won a championship. He was a running back, fullback. Played with Peyton Manning, T. Martin. You know,
Yeah.
a name of guys. I can keep going down. And so whenever he hired me at after school, he said, "Look, I trust you. I hired you for a job. This is what I want it to be." And so he said, "I want the formations to be basically NFL style formation. I want you to be spread right, spread left, etc. I want the run game to be it's like Gus Malzahn. I want
Mhm.
NFL. I want NFL teams for run game, and I want NCAA teams for passing game." And he said, "What you do with that, I'm gonna trust you, and I'm gonna let you do what you do." So our first year, we started out with 17, maybe 19 kids. My
Mhm.
first year there at Asheville School, and whenever I left there last year, we ended up having 40 something on roster. Um, and we kept the same philosophy year in and year out, the same terminology and everything. The only thing that I would do is every end of the year, I would basically do film breakdown and see what we were good at and what we wasn't. And I would add or drop whatever. Like if we was bad at something, I'd drop it. And then if we drop something, I would try to add to what can make us successful.
Right.
And we would always average 40 points a game. And I just try to do the best that I can with what I had. And had two quarterbacks with me, and they all passed for over 2,000 yards, but they also rushed for like my first 2 years. The quarterback that we had, he rushed for 1,000+ yards every year because he was more of a runner. So it was a lot more of run game stuff involved as well as air raid philosophies. And then my last 2 years, we had a throwing quarterback, and he was more pocket passer type, but he would also run the ball too. So whenever my version of air raid is different than others, I kind of adapted the Phil Longo version. I
Mhm.
love that guy to death. I still talk to Phil to this day. He's a great guy, a great football knowledge, and basically you want to get your playmakers involved, and you want to get them the ball to where they can score. So whether it's going 5 wide and throwing it, or if you're going two backs and running Q power, I mean, you want to do what you can to get them guys involved. And I learned a lot just from being a student of the game and never take a no for an answer. I mean, I think with Phil, I think I emailed him probably 5 or 6 times while he was at Carolina,
Hmm.
trying to get him to respond to me. Like,
Yeah.
please, coach, I want to learn. I want to know. And that's whenever he had Sam Howell. Um,
Yep.
and we played against Sam Howell's old coach. He ended up being at Hickory Grove. And he was Sam Howell's high school coach. I'm like, please, coach, respond. Like, Phil, please respond to me. And I mean, ever since then, me and him, we talk week to week basis, and I always tell him, before he plays a big game, like, hey man, you got this, you got it, or a good game or whatever. I just learned a lot from being multiple in that sense of an air raid. Yes, it's about throwing the ball in the sense, but at the same time, it's kind of the old Wishbone philosophy. Let's get our ball to the playmakers and let them do what they do, and that's really helped me as a coach, especially on the offensive side.
Yeah, but with that air raid concept, would you still practice it like an air raid type, or if that year it's more run, do you kind of dial it back? Because people like to practice it like the Mike Leach way, like we're going to do the same thing over and over. Do you take that philosophy still, or if it's more run?
So, so I'm still good friends with the offensive coordinator at Western Kentucky, who is Drew Hollingshed.
Yeah,
I still talk to him once a week. I always text him. I always try to stay in his ear, like, hey, keep up the good work, whatever. Um, there's still two things we do every day. That's settling loose and pat and go.
hmm,
That's two things that we're going to do every single day. Because at any given time, I need my quarterbacks to know how to run pat and go, and I need them to learn how to run mesh.
right.
Um, other than that, yeah, we just kind of adapted to. I mean, like my last year at Ashford School, which was last year, um, we got a tight end now who's at Central Michigan, and another one who is at he's at center. Um, 6'5", 6'7" kids. Like, like, look, dude, we're going to be a lot of 12 personnel. So we got to be able to run the ball, but we also got to be able to RPO off of it, and we got to be able to get them guys in space because with the ball in their hand, nobody can tackle them,
Right.
especially in the league that we play in. I've got to do my job, and I've got to make it the best thing possible for these kids. So there's been things that I've had to adapt, and there's things that I just won't adapt. I guess you could say, as far as we got to be able to throw pat and go, we got to be able to throw settle and loose, and even in pat and go, we still we teach our guys how to throw back shoulder fades and all that um, because that's deadly.
Right.
And
I've tried to get Drew on here a couple times. He doesn't answer me, but I keep trying really hard.
well, I'll make sure I tell them, like, hey, dude, you got to get on this show.
Well, I take the same philosophy with this podcast, and I reach out to coaches, and it's either they say no, they don't answer, and I would say probably 85 to 90% they say yes. So that
Yeah,
10%, whatever. If they don't answer me in like 2 months, I try again. If they don't answer me in
yeah.
like 2 months, I try again. Like,
Persistence, and that's all it is. Like, even even with us as coaches, but it even goes down to the kids. Like, if you're trying to get recruited, and you want to play at that level, and you believe you can play at that level, you've got to be the biggest marketer that you can as far as being persistent. You've got to keep reaching out to these coaches, keep making sure that they know that your name is relevant and that you can potentially help them. And that's the same way I took, because I was the same way in high school. Even playing right tackle and defensive line, like, I mean, I could go back to my email now and I still save it to all the coaches that I sent my stuff to. Um, I can't even tell you what number it is, to be honest with you, but like, I'm gonna keep emailing them and keep trying to reach out to them, because at the end of the
mhm,
day, all I can say at the end of it is, look, I tried.
yep,
And I think that's big in today's game, especially with the portal and all that. From kids to players, is just keep being persistent, and eventually it'll come true. Like I said with Longo, I don't know how many emails I sent to him. The same thing with Kirby Moore at Missouri. I never got his personal number until I emailed him. I think it was 7 or 8 times.
Wow.
And then one day he finally hit me up on Twitter like, "Look, this is my number. Call me."
Hmm.
And I called him, and my wife's sitting there like, "Who are you talking to?" I'm like, "I'm talking to Kirby Moore. He's the OC at Missouri." Like, you know what I mean? Like, I want to learn about what they're doing and how they're doing it, especially last year. You know, they're doing all this wide zone stuff and
Hmm.
everything, and I love it because you know I know Coach Kadudi too, and
Yep.
they're just doing it on a different level. I want to learn what's different from what they're doing and what Kadudi's doing, and um, so it's just a lot about persistence.
Right. At any college level, I tell our kids that no matter what level we're realistic with them about where they're going to play, if it's Division three, two, whatever it is. One of the first things the kids ask me is, "What do I do?" And I say, "There's two things. You make your highlight tape and make sure it's short because those coaches don't want anything longer.
Yeah,
Second thing is you make a realistic list and then you reach out to those coaches. Just
yeah,
keep reaching out." Well, I sent them a message like 6 months ago. I'm like, you got to do it all the time because the amount of DMs they get, they probably miss it or whatever. I said,
persistence.
I keep telling them that that's the top two
Yeah,
things. And they're
yeah,
like,
and that's been the biggest thing to me in my career is persistence. Like
yeah,
whether he's the OC at Alabama or DC at Georgia, I'm gonna be persistent. If I'm wanting to learn something, I'm gonna be persistent until I at least get an email back or at least know where he's at with me.
right.
It's just persistence. It may be annoying to some people, but at the end of the day, I mean, we all gotta
Oh, yeah. That's why, I started this in February of 2020. COVID hit, so there was, like, no sports or anything to talk about, um, and it just kinda grew to, like, reach out to coaches, and I realized that more often than not, no matter how many times, you're gonna get what you want out of it.
grow.
Um, a question, just to talk ball, just to do whatever. Like a funny story, I reached out to Coach Drinkle last year to be on, OC at Army, at the time. And he came on and he looked at our schedule, I guess. He was like, "Oh, I know some of these schools that recruit in the area." We go to play week 9 last year. He texts me and goes, "I can't root for you this week." And I was like, "Wait, what?" He goes, "Yeah, I can't root for you this week." I said, "Why?" He goes, "I'm recruiting 2 kids of the team you're about to play, so I can't root for you." Like
Yeah.
something funny like that. And you're like, "Oh, okay. These are real people. Like they're not, it's it's just an awesome community when you reach out to those big time coaches and you can just talk to them. You're like, "Oh, you're a real person. You're not
Yep.
like." There are some that are too good, and you're like, "Well, I don't wanna talk to you if you think you're too good." The other ones that are like, I'll reach out to them randomly, like, "Hey, good luck this week," and they'll respond back, "Hey, how's it going? How's the team going?" They'll look it up, and they're like, "Oh," even if they're not recruiting that school, they do it. They're like, "Oh, yeah, I see oh, you guys went 7-2? That's awesome," and, um, like Coach Bielema at Illinois, his staff really hit the ground running in Illinois. Like, our head coach gets a text every 2 weeks from a coach from Illinois, like, "Oh, hey, good win this week. Oh, hey, I saw it was a tough game." Like, during the season, it's every week. The offseason, it's every 2 weeks. Like, they really hit the ground running, and the funny thing is, he will text them and say, "Can we get tickets to the game?" And they'll give us tickets. They're just like, "Yeah, sure." They love it.
And that's what I love about being out here in South Carolina now. So at South Carolina, you know, Coach Fury, he's a wide receiver coach in South Carolina
Yeah.
now. And you know, just that connection in a sense, like, you know, going from Limestone to him being in Chicago with the Bears and then
Mhm.
you know, him coming back to Limestone and blah blah. Like having that connection is just great because I mean I even seen him whenever we did the 7-on-7 this past off season, and he was there just supporting his son. And I went up to him and he's like, "Coach, how you doing?" Just dapping me up and loving on me, and you know
Mhm.
that just does numbers to you whenever you're into this coaching thing and you think that like, oh, he forgot about me. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, like they don't ever really forget. They're busy just like me and you are. Like if me and you had a lot going on, they'd be busy too. So
Oh,
um,
yeah.
the game of football is a lot closer than a lot of people seem, and I love it. I love being in the game. Even still to this day, like my playing career didn't work out how it should, and that is what it is. But as far as coaching, I love being tight. Love knowing what I know and get to learn every day. what I need to know and what I don't need to know.
Mm-hmm.
It's great.
Oh, for sure. Coach Bart Miller is the O-line coach at University of Illinois, and he texted me during the spring, "Hey, come watch us practice. Are you coming down?" Because my parents live down there. He's like, "Hey, if you come down, let me know." So I told him. He goes, "Oh yeah, come out to practice. I'll try to get you in to watch film or something." And then all of a sudden he goes, "Let's go talk to Bielema." And you go up, and he's like, "Hey, I'm Coach Bielema. Nice to meet you." And you just talk to him for a second, and then he's busy doing whatever. And then a little bit later, Bielema will walk by and be like, "You doing okay?" Um, One of the coolest experiences was our strength coach interned at Northwestern, and this is when Pat Fitzgerald was there. And so during their fall camp, he said, "Hey, bring your staff and come watch a practice." They let us sit in on the meetings. They then we got to go out there and they gave us a practice script, like this is where we're going to be, this is how it goes. Fitzgerald came up and talked to us for 20 minutes. They're doing something. He's for 20 minutes is talking to us. And we're like, "Don't you have to coach?" He goes, "That's what the assistant coaches are for. Like they can go out there and do that." Then he does his media thing right after, grabs us and he goes, "You want to see the weight room? You want to see the indoor facility? You want to see this?" And started doing that. That was the year they were going to Ireland to play. So he's talking about that and all this stuff. And I'm like, "Oh, you guys are real people. Like this is
Yeah,
like,"
it's awesome.
but then the whole shit happened with him right after that. And people are like, "Well, what did you see? Like, what happened?" And I said, "Guys, all I can tell you is he was a class act. The assistant coaches were class acts. The players,
Yeah,
every player came up to us and said, 'Coach, thanks for coming. Coach, thanks for coming.'" We got a tour of the place. The way we saw it was like, so I can't say anything on it besides they are all first class people and they're not
yeah.
what you think they are. And that was it. Like, I can't tell you the amount of text messages I got. "Well, you were there last year. Didn't you see what happened?" And I'm like, "I could just tell you he was a cool dude." Like that's all.
Right.
And then he was like, "I'll come watch a game." And by God, two Northwestern guys came to watch a game, not recruiting. They just showed up to watch. And we're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, this is awesome."
Hmm.
Like those connections are invaluable.
For sure.
I'm looking up names you're telling me and like following them on Twitter. I'm like, "Yep, that guy. Yep, that guy." um, what there was a question I was going to ask. Can't remember. What's your favorite air raid passing concept?
Oh man, you put me on the spot. Um, if you can't run six the way or four verticals the way that you need to, my favorite pass concept in the air raid is mesh.
Yep.
It's just because of the variations that you get off of it, and it's simple to teach my quarterbacks. Look, we're looking at this, but if nothing's open, the mesh is open. Because how we teach our receivers that are running the mesh, or our tight ends or receivers that are running the mesh or whatever is your job on this play is to get open. I don't care how you get open. Your job is to find grass and sit in it or get to it.
Right.
One of the two. Um, so that's probably my favorite play, and they say that mesh is very cost effective. Um, I know from listening to Hal Mummy and doing his courses and stuff, and he's a great guy and he's a
Mhm.
genius by all means. But we do mesh drill. I say every day or every other day. With our slot guys, understanding who's setting it, who's making it, and if you do it that way, it's very cost efficient, especially for your quarterbacks, because I think that you can do a lot of deep passing game stuff, but also be able to have two hots in a sense, um, with the meshes, and it's been good to us. My past 5 years of running this and calling it, um, mesh has been my most effective air raid play. So
Yeah.
um,
I,
I
I love
love
mesh,
it.
shallow, and stick. Like those three, if I could go into a game, I'd feel pretty good. Just
Definitely,
because of the tags you could put on the outside guys and stuff and make it look a little different. Um,
because
and
there's even tags where we've got to with stick that's just like we'll tag the outside guy on the stick, and and run basically a wheel with the slot guy, and you're sticking with your outside guy, and you still got your running back running the swing, and just putting the flat defenders in a bind, because at the high school level, if you put an outside linebacker in a bind, it's going to be pretty good for you.
Right.
It's just been a lot of good stuff for us, and we've also, with the shallow, we've got it to where we get in a 3-by-1 and it looks like a drive concept, but it's not drive. It's still shallow to us, and we
Right.
let our quarterback read it the way that he's supposed to read it, and it basically 2 plays in one, and I love it. So that's really why I've adapted it. Um, like I said, big shout out to Longo and Josh Snow, who was his graduate assistant at Ole Miss and North Carolina. Josh Snow has been a really good source for me as far as how to adapt the air raid philosophy of what North Carolina was doing whenever they was very good and competitive to the high school level, because it's air raid in a sense, but at the same time, all we're trying to do is create space, and
Right.
all we're trying to do is get the ball in those guys' hands. So I can't credit those guys enough. Like, really, Josh Snow and Phil Longo. Anytime I got a question, dude, I'll send them a text, or they'll get on a call with me, and we'll figure this thing out. And everything that they have told me or given me has been money. So I owe a lot to them too.
Yeah. I remember I had Matt Mummy on here in the spring. Great guy. And I asked him that. I was like, some people call themselves air raid. What's true air raid? Can you tell me that? And he said, like, the right answer is like how Mummy Mike Leach, like that's what it, but
Right.
he's like, realistically, if you look at the philosophy of it, of getting the guys that are your best players, the ball in their hand, creating space, no matter what offense you are, you could say this or that about it. And he's like, that's kind of the philosophy, because he's like, I've adapted, like we're in pistol, we're doing this. And
Yeah.
he goes, yes, I still run things similar to what his dad does and Coach Leach did. And he's like, but realistically, even running the ball, like how do you create space? Like you could look at it that way and where to
Yeah.
go. So he's like, that's the way it is. And I was like, oh, okay. Because I hear people say they're air raid and I see their concepts. And when I was studying it, I was like, you're not air raid. What are you talking about? But I guess if you go into it with the philosophy of that and create space, call yourself air raid. That's fine.
And that's the same thing with Drew Hollingshed, who's at Western Kentucky now. I've created a good bond with him, and he's a really, really, really smart guy. And it's the same way with him. How can we get these looks out of different formations, and how can we motion to this and it look like this, and
Mhm.
what's some different variations that we could do, but it still be the same exact play, so that way our kids can play fast and our quarterback can think fast, and he's done a really good job with me too. Like I said, Drew Hollingshed, Josh Snow, and Phil Longo. Those three right there are they're gems in the game, man.
Right.
And I appreciate them so much, just because of everything they've given to me. And I'm just a little old football coach in South Carolina now. And even whenever I was a little old football coach in North Carolina at the private school level in Division II, like I wasn't playing Providence Day and all them, but they still bled into me, and they really helped me adapt and become a better football coach. And for that, I'm forever indebted to
Right.
them, for sure.
And for air raid high school stuff, I would always reach out to Drew Piscopo and he responds like
And,
back and forth.
and dude, that's another one. Like Drew Piscopo, he's at a small school in North Carolina, but Drew Piscopo, he also knows this stuff too. I mean, you're talking about like a Mike Leach original. Like
Yeah.
he's gonna tell you what Mike Leach used to call it, what he calls it, why he calls it this, or why Mike Leach called it that. I still got Drew's number to this day, and I'll text him from time to time. I'll send him just a random, screenshot of this play, and he'll tell me the terminology, the reason, and the
Mhm.
teaching of it. And Drew Piscopo's another good one too.
Oh yeah. He even did my podcast. He was like on his lunch break. He's like, "I'll give you an hour on my lunch break." I was like, "Awesome!" And you're an awesome guy. And the way he explained it, and then he told me, he was like, "You kind of knew the answers to some of these before you asked me." I was like, "Because I've studied this so much."
Yeah,
And
Drew's a smart guy too, man. Like he knows his stuff for sure.
oh, he
He
was a guy
definitely
I was afraid because I was like, "I'm gonna sound dumb with like some of it."
that's why I just sent him a screenshot because I'm afraid to call him and be like, hey, blah 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 blah, and then he's gonna make me sound stupid. So
Oh yeah, there's been plenty of coaches I've had on this podcast, and I'm like, I'm gonna sound so dumb. I'm gonna ask the dumb questions, and luckily, I have not embarrassed myself too much with some of that. And oh god, because I tell everybody right from the get go, I'm a dumb country boy. You gotta give me a second. Like it's
yeah, like just slow it down, brother. Just slow it
yeah. I was like, tell me like I'm 5. You gotta slow it down a little bit.
down.
I was like, I baled hay in the summer. Give me a break for a second. Like this is what it was. Um, well, Coach, I've taken an hour of your time. I appreciate you coming on here on a Sunday night before we go back to work. Um, hopefully, you come back on when I'm not as busy with basketball and softball. The summer is where I kick it off. Summer. Oh, let me tell you this. I remember starting this. Do you know who Coach Banster is? He has a podcast. He's in
Yes,
Ohio.
yes.
I started it in COVID. Then he starts one, and it become like a competition of like how many coaches can we get on. I remember we were texting back and forth. And I remember one week, in one day, I did 4 or 5, and then we did like 15 a week. I always get like 15 coaches on. I was like, bam, 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 we got to get it going. I still do that now. Like in the summer, I'll get as many as I can on with my schedule, and I work around it. Like I know some college coaches like 6 a.m. I'm like, you got it. Like I'll be up.
Right.
Oh God, but no, Coach, I appreciate you coming on here.
Hey, I appreciate you for having me, man. Like I said, man, it's great that you're doing what you're doing, and all the other coaches are doing what they're doing, man. It's all about learning and connecting at the end of the day. So,
Right.
and it's definitely something like I've talked to you about. Like I want to get involved in it. I want to, figure out how you do things or what I need to do to, get to where you're at and stuff like that. So, I definitely appreciate you having me on, man.